This is not a tale of heroes clad in gold, nor of battles waged beneath open skies. No, this is a story etched in shadow, whispered in the language of ambition unfulfilled, of bloodlines tarnished, of a house whose very foundations were laid upon principles both noble and fatally flawed. This is the rise and fall of Slytherin, and one, Severus Snape, am perhaps the last true son of that legacy, to stand upon the bones of its history, to sift the ash of its pyre. You will hear not the sanitized version peddled in first-year history of magic textbooks, nor the venomous slander spat by those who fear what they do not understand. You will hear truth, bitter, unvarnished truth, as sharp as a well-honed dagger, as cold as the depths of the Black Lake. Listen, not with your ears alone, but with the stillness that comes before sleep. Let my voice be the current that carries you down, down, into the deep, forgotten waters of Hogwarts. Consider Salazar Slytherin, not the caricature, not the spectre conjured by frightened children huddled beneath blankets after a ghost story. The man, a mind of staggering brilliance, yes, a founder of this institution, alongside Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, and Rowena Ravenclaw, equal in stature, in vision, in the sheer force of will required to carve a sanctuary for magic from the wild, untamed lands of Scotland. His brilliance was not merely in spellcraft, though his mastery of the dark arts was profound, a necessary discipline in those brutal times, when muggles hunted wizards like stags. No, his genius lay in his understanding of essence. He saw magic not as a random spark granted on a whim, but as a legacy, birthright flowing through blood, as surely as the currents flow beneath the earth. Purity, not the crude, snarling bigotry that later generations would reduce it to, but a purity of potential. He believed, fervently, that the deepest wells of magic could only be drawn from those whose lineage was unmuddied by the mundane, that the very soil of the wizarding soul was richer, deeper, when cultivated through generations untouched by the taint of non-magical blood. Was this a flaw? Perhaps, but it was born not of hatred initially, but of a desperate desire to preserve, to protect the fragile flame of wizardkin from being drowned out, extinguished, by the overwhelming tide of the non-magical world. He saw the fear in Muggle eyes, the suspicion, the inevitable violence that followed discovery. He sought a bulwark, a fortress of blood and magic, and he built it here, in the very stones of the Chamber of Secrets. Ah, yes, that hidden place. It was not conceived as a weapon. Not then. It was a sanctuary, a place of ultimate teaching, where his true heirs could learn the deepest magics, the oldest rites, the purest expressions of their inherited power, safe from the dilution he saw creeping into the school with Hufflepuff's open doors. He did not wish to expel Muggleborns out of malice. He wished to separate, to create a space where the pure stream could run clear, unmixed, a noble ideal, perhaps, viewed through a lens clouded by fear. But ideals, untempered by compassion, by the simple recognition of value beyond blood curdle. They turn sour, they rot from within. And Salazar Slytherin, for all his wisdom, could not see the rot he planted with his own hands. He left Hogwarts, not in a blaze of glory, but in quiet, profound disappointment. He saw his vision, his necessary safeguard, being dismantled by his peers. He saw the dilution begin. He walked away, leaving behind a legacy waiting to be corrupted. That is the true tragedy of his rise. It contained the seed of its own fall within its very conception. Ambition, unchecked by empathy, becomes a hunger that consumes itself. The centuries that followed, they were a slow seepage, like water finding cracks in ancient stone. Slytherin House did not collapse overnight. It eroded. Generation upon generation of students entered its common room, nestled beneath the black lake, its greenish light filtering through the enchanted ceiling, painting shifting patterns on walls of rough-hewn rock. They heard the whispers, the stories of Salazar, the emphasis on blood purity, the expectation of cunning, of resourcefulness, of the will to grasp power. But the context was lost. The why was forgotten. Only the what remained. Be ambitious. Value your blood. Look out for yourself first. These became mantras, stripped of their original protective intent, twisted into justifications for selfishness, for cruelty, for the belief that might makes right. The noble serpent became a symbol not of wisdom and protection, but of stealthy strikes and venomous betrayal. The sorting hat still sang of great cunning and resourcefulness, but the deeper song, the song of legacy and preservation, grew faint, drowned out by the louder, cruder chorus of superiority. Slytherin produced ministers for magic, yes, healers of renown, potion makers whose skills were legendary. But their achievements were often shadowed by the louder, darker deeds of their housemates. The ambition that drove a Slytherin to master arithmancy was the same ambition that drove another to master the imperious curse. The resourcefulness that found a cure for dragonpox was the same resourcefulness that found loopholes in magical law to amass wealth and influence through less savory means. The house became defined not by its brightest lights, but by its deepest shadows. And the shadows grew longer, much longer. The world beyond Hogwarts changed. Muggle-borns were not the rare, bewildered children Salazar feared. They were powerful witches and wizards in their own right, bringing fresh perspectives, new magics, a vitality that Slytherin's increasingly insular culture could not comprehend, only resent. The Statute of Secrecy was signed, a necessary barrier, but it also isolated the pureblood families further, turning them inward, breeding paranoia and a sense of entitlement. They clung to their bloodlines like life rafts on a stormy sea, forgetting that the sea itself was changing. They forgot Salazar's fear had been for the survival of magic, not merely the dominance of a select few. The purity he sought to preserve became an idol, worshipped with blind fervor, its true purpose obscured. The rise continued, yes, in terms of political power, in influence within the ministry, in the accumulation of ancient, powerful artifacts hidden in the vaults of Gringotts. But the soul of the house, the soul was sickening. It was becoming what Salazar had feared the outside world would make it. Something diminished, something dangerous, something turning on itself. Then came the Gaunts. Oh, the Gaunts. A name that curdles the blood. A perfect illustration of the rot within the very blood Salazar sought to preserve. Descendants of Slytherin himself, they clung to that lineage with the desperation of drowning men, but they had lost everything else. Their magic, once potent, became unstable, flickering like a guttering candle. Their minds, warped by generations of inbreeding in pursuit of that mythical purity, curdled into madness and squalor. They lived in filth, in a hovel clinging to the edge of Little Hangleton, hoarding Slytherin's last relics, the locket, the ring, not as symbols of legacy, but as talismans of their own imagined superiority. They whispered the Parseltang, the rare gift Salazar possessed, but used it not for communion with ancient magic, but to hiss curses at neighbors, to intimidate the weak. They embodied the absolute perversion of Salazar's ideal. Blood purity without power, blood purity without wisdom, blood purity without dignity. They were the living embodiment of the fall. Not a fall from grace, but a fall into a pit of their own making, dug deep by generations of pride and prejudice. Tom Riddle found them. He saw not the decay, but the symbol. He saw the last pitiful bearers of Slytherin's blood, and he took what he wanted, the ring, the locket, the connection. He used their madness, their obsession, to fuel his own ascent. He understood the power of a name, of a legacy, even one tarnished. He saw in the Gaunts not ancestors to honor, but stepping stones to be crushed underfoot. He took the symbol of the serpent, the sign of Slytherin, and forged it into the dark mark. He took the ideal of blood purity and twisted it into a doctrine of genocide. He took the ambition that was a Slytherin hallmark and turned it into a lust for absolute, unchallenged dominion. He did not corrupt Slytherin House. He revealed what it had already become. He held up a mirror, and the reflection was monstrous. Many in Slytherin House saw not a monster, but a savior. They saw the restoration of their perceived birthright. They saw the pureblood families finally taking their rightful place. They forgot Salazar's fear was for survival, not conquest. They forgot the original impulse was protection, not annihilation. They embraced the Dark Lord not because he was Slytherin's heir, but because he promised the ultimate expression of the values they had been taught to cherish above all else: power, dominance, the supremacy of blood. They marched under his banner, not out of loyalty to Hogwarts, but out of loyalty to a twisted dream that bore only the faintest, most corrupted echo of Salazar's original vision. They became Death Eaters. They became the instruments of terror. And in doing so, they buried the true legacy of Slytherin, deeper than the Chamber of Secrets beneath the castle. They made the name synonymous with evil. They ensured that for generations to come, children sorted into green and silver would feel the weight of suspicion, the sting of prejudice, the burden of a history they did not make but were forced to carry. That is the true fall, not the loss of political power after the wars, though that came, not the damaged reputation, though that festers still. The fall was the loss of the soul, the severing of the connection to the original, flawed but defensible ideal. Slytherin House became a monument not to wisdom and preservation, but to the seductive, self-destructive power of unchecked ambition and the poison of blood supremacy. I walked those corridors. I sat in that common room, the green light reflecting in the lake above, the water pressing down like the weight of expectation. I felt the whispers. I heard the slurs against Muggleborns, not as Salazar's defensive precaution, but as casual cruelty. I saw the ambition that valued power over principle, connections over character. I was drawn to it. Oh yes, do not mistake me for a hypocrite who claims immunity. I was a child of the streets, poor, fatherless, bearing the shame of a Muggle father who was a brute and a drunkard. Slytherin House offered an escape from that squalor. It offered belonging. It offered the promise that my magic, my blood, however tainted on one side, could elevate me. It offered power, and I craved power with a hunger that still shames me. I embraced the rhetoric. I used the word mudblood. I sought the approval of those who held the old pure blood names in reverence. The Rosiers, the Averys, the Blacks. I thought aligning myself with their ideology, with him, would wash away the stain of my father. It was a fool's bargain, a child's desperate grasp at a golden ring that was, in truth, tarnished lead. I learned the dark arts, not from textbooks alone, but from the whispers in the dungeons, from the older students who already bore the mark. I learned cunning, yes, I learned resourcefulness, I learned to survive, but I learned the wrong lessons. I learned that strength lay only in dominance, that loyalty was a weakness to be exploited, that love was a vulnerability to be despised. I learned these lessons from the corrupted heirs of Slytherin, not from the ghost of Salazar, whose portrait, I am told, hangs in a forgotten corridor, his eyes holding a sorrow I only understood much later. I stood on the edges of the group that would become his inner circle. I was not Bellatrix Lestrange, burning with fanatical devotion. I was not Lucius Malfoy, smooth and calculating, already weaving his family's influence into the ministry. I was the quiet one, the one who listened, the one who knew. I knew the depth of his power. I knew the horror he was capable of, and I was seduced by it, not by the ideology, not truly by the power, by the promise that I could wield it, that I could be feared, that I could rise above the boy my father had made me. I carved the symbol of the dark mark into my own arm. I felt the searing pain as a baptism, a rebirth into strength. What a fool I was, what a profound, devastating fool. I did not see then that he offered not strength, but slavery, not power, but the illusion of it, granted and revoked at his whim. I did not see that the true strength Salazar Slytherin possessed, the strength of vision, of principle, however flawed, was utterly absent in the creature who called himself Lord Voldemort. He was not an heir. He was a desecrator. He took the symbol of the serpent and made it a thing of terror. He took the house colors and stained them with blood. He took the ambition and turned it into a ravenous hunger that consumed everything it touched, including his own followers. I saw it too late. I saw the true face of the monster when he demanded the life of a woman whose only crime was her blood, and whose only shield was a love I had thrown away. Lily Evans. Her name was a knife to the heart then. It remains so now. Her death was the catalyst, not just for Potter's boy, for me. When he marked her for death, he shattered the illusion. He revealed the utter emptiness at the core of his cause. Blood purity meant nothing to him but a tool. Power was an end in itself, devoid of meaning, devoid of the preservation Salazar had sought. He would burn the entire wizarding world to ash, if it meant he stood alone atop the pyre. And I had helped stoke the flames. I had given him the prophecy. I had delivered the means to her destruction. My ambition, my desire to prove myself worthy of Slytherin's legacy, had led me to betray the only truly pure thing I had ever known. The fall was not just Slytherin's. It was mine. Personal, devastating, absolute. The war raged. The castle, my home, became a battleground. The Slytherin common room, that sanctuary beneath the lake, became a den of vipers. Fear hung thicker than the lake water. Students whose families were Death Eaters swaggered with borrowed arrogance. Others, like Draco Malfoy, a boy burdened by a legacy he never asked for, raised on poison, trembled under the weight of expectations they could not fulfill. The true Slytherin traits, cunning, resourcefulness, self-preservation, were twisted into tools of survival under a tyrant. Many fled, many hid. Some, like the young Pansy Parkinson, grasped for any shred of power the Dark Lord's favor might bring, parroting his rhetoric with the desperate fervor of the insecure. Others, like Theodore Nott, retreated into cold silence, observing, calculating their next move, embodying the self-interested pragmatism Slytherin House had perfected. Only a handful, the truest heirs of Salazar's original protective instinct, perhaps, like the quiet, bookish Daphne Greengrass, who vanished one night with her sister, understood that preservation sometimes meant walking away, that staying was not loyalty, but complicity. The house fractured, the unity of blood and ambition shattered under the pressure of true evil. The Carrows came, sadistic, petty, reveling in the power the Dark Lord granted them. They turned Hogwarts into a prison camp. They perverted the very idea of education. They demanded students torture their peers. They made sport of Muggleborns dragged from their homes. And where was Slytherin House in this? Some participated eagerly. Crabbe and Goyle, thick as trolls but vicious, became tools of the Carrows' cruelty. Others watched silently, too afraid to speak, too entrenched in the belief that their blood made them safe. A few, like the young Blaise Zabini, whose mother's own dark reputation was legend, kept their heads down, their expressions carefully blank, surviving but not thriving. The common room, once a place of quiet discussion and strategic planning, reeked of fear and sycophancy. The green light from the lake no longer felt like protection. It felt like the sickly glow of decay. The serpent banner hung like a shroud. This was not Salazar's vision. This was not even the corrupted ambition of the pure-blood elite. This was the final, degrading stage of the fall. The house reduced to cowering subjects, its students broken or brutalized, its proud history trampled under the boots of true monsters who wore the colors but understood nothing of the legacy they defiled. I moved among them, the potions master, the head of Slytherin, the trusted Death Eater. My face was a mask of cold indifference. My voice dripped with disdain for the blood traitors and mudbloods, the Carrows persecuted. I enforced their rules. I allowed the beatings. I maintained the illusion. All while my soul screamed. All while I passed information to the old man, Albus Dumbledore, in the dead of night, in the flickering light of his office, the weight of my betrayal a constant ache. I played my part in the charade, for Lily's son, for the prophecy, for the faint, flickering hope that the true spirit of Hogwarts, not just Slytherin, but the whole, could be saved. I protected the students as I could, subtly, through lowered grades that kept them from detention, through overlooked rule-breaking that might have drawn the Carrows' wrath. Through occlumency shields I taught the Potter boy, however poorly he learned. But I could not protect them all. I could not stop the fear. I could not erase the poison that had seeped so deep into the house I was bound to lead. The fall was complete. Slytherin House was no longer a bastion of anything but survival and shame. The night of the final battle. The air crackled, not just with stray curses, but with the weight of centuries. The castle groaned under the assault. Flames licked the stones Salazar himself had helped lay. The corridors echoed with screams of pain, of rage, of loss. In the room of requirement, where the lost things of Hogwarts gather, Draco, Malfoy, Vincent Crabbe, Gregory Goyle, children playing at being men, forced to be soldiers, faced the consequences of the path chosen for them. Crabbe, in his blind panic, unleashed funfire, not just fire, but cursed fire, a manifestation of the very chaos and destruction that had consumed the ideals of his house. It consumed the room. It consumed Crabbe. It nearly consumed Draco and Goyle, saved only by the timely intervention of Potter and his friends, Gryffindors, Ravens, Hufflepuffs, who risked their lives for the sons of Death Eaters. The irony was thick enough to choke on. The fire that devoured Crabbe was born of the same unchecked ambition, the same lack of true control, the same descent into destructive chaos that had devoured the soul of Slytherin House. It was a fitting symbol. As the battle raged outside, I stood before the headmaster's office, now occupied by the false headmaster, Amicus Carrow. I had a task, a final piece of information for Dumbledore's plan. But the Dark Lord summoned me. He believed, in his arrogance, that I was the master of the Elder Wand. He believed killing me would cement his power. He did not understand the Wand's true allegiance. He did not understand the depth of my deception. He did not understand love in the shrieking shack, as Nagini's venom flooded my veins, as my life bled out onto the filthy floor. I saw not the Dark Lord's triumphant face. I saw Lily's eyes in Potter's eyes. I gave him my memories, my truth, my shame, my redemption, such as it was. I died not as a Death Eater, but as Dumbledore's man. I died not for blood purity, but for love, for protection, for the very things Salazar Slytherin had, in his own flawed way, sought to preserve. Did he know, in his final moments, the perversion of his legacy? Did his portrait weep? I do not know. I only know that as the darkness closed in, I understood. The rise of Slytherin was built on a foundation of fear. The fall was the inevitable consequence when that fear curdled into hatred, when ambition lost its moral compass, when the protection of the few became the oppression of the many. My death was a small thing against the vast tapestry of that fall, but it was a thread pulled in the other direction, a single note of redemption in a symphony of ruin. After the battle, silence. A different kind of weight settled over Hogwarts. The stones were scarred, the air heavy with grief, and the lingering scent of smoke and blood. Slytherin House was diminished. Not just in number, many families had fled, were imprisoned, or lay dead, but in spirit. The common room was almost empty. The green light from the lake seemed muted, sorrowful. Those who remained, the younger students who had spent the year under the Carrow's terror, were shell-shocked. The proud, ambitious Slytherins who had swaggered the corridors were gone, imprisoned in Azkaban, or dead on the battlefield. The survivors carried a different burden, the burden of association, the burden of the name. They were eyed with suspicion by the other houses. Teachers treated them cautiously. The ministry investigators combed through their families' histories. The fall was not just historical. It was visceral, immediate, and deeply personal for every child who returned to that damp, green-lit room. I was dead, of course, but my legacy lingered. The revelation of my true allegiance, my role as Dumbledore's spy, my sacrifice, it cast a complex shadow. Some saw it as the ultimate Slytherin move, the perfect deception, the ultimate survival. Others, perhaps, glimpsed the deeper truth, that the house's core values, cunning, resourcefulness, preservation, could be turned to a nobler purpose. That loyalty, when directed rightly, was not weakness. That ambition could be a force for protection, not just power. But such nuances were lost in the raw aftermath. For most, Slytherin was still the house of Death Eaters, the house of Voldemort. The stigma was thick, suffocating. Professor Slughorn, who had returned to his post, tried to rebuild. He emphasized the house's history of producing brilliant potion makers, skilled healers, shrewd businessmen. He downplayed the darker aspects, perhaps too much. He courted the few remaining pure-blood scions, like the Zabinis, seeking to restore the old connections. But the soul was gone. The true understanding of Salazar's original, flawed but defensible ideal was buried under layers of blood and betrayal. The students who came after, they came wary. Some still clung to the old prejudices, whispering about blood status in hushed tones, dreaming of a return to glory. But many more came burdened by the weight of the past, determined to forge a new path. They saw the cost. They saw the ruin. They wanted no part of the dark legacy. Yet the Sorting Hat still placed them there. The castle itself has a memory. It recognizes the ambition, the cunning, the drive for self-preservation that are innate Slytherin traits, regardless of blood status. And so the house persists. But it is a ghost of its former self, a ghost haunted by its own history. The rise was slow, built on fear and a desire to preserve. The fall was swift, catastrophic, the result of that fear twisting into hatred, that ambition turning ravenous, that preservation becoming destruction. The chamber Salazar built to protect his true heirs became the lair of a monster he would not have recognized as his own. The serpent banner that once signified wisdom and protection now evokes only unease. The common room beneath the lake, once a proud sanctuary, feels more like a tomb for lost ideals. What remains, after the pyre has cooled, after the ashes have settled? There is no grand restoration, no sudden redemption for the house as a whole. The fall is not something easily undone. The damage runs deep, etched into the stones of Hogwarts, into the memories of those who lived through the wars, into the wary eyes of Muggle-born students who still feel a chill when they pass the dungeon corridors. Slytherin House continues. Students are sorted, Quidditch matches are played, exams are taken, but the shadow lingers. The ambition is still there, yes, the cunning, the drive to succeed. These are not inherently dark traits. Ambition built Hogwarts, cunning solved problems no brute force could touch. Resourcefulness ensured survival through centuries of persecution. These are Slytherin's true gifts to the wizarding world. But the lesson of the fall is this: without a moral core, without compassion, without the understanding that true strength lies in protecting the whole, not just the privileged few, these traits become weapons turned inward and outward. They become the tools of destruction. The Gaunts perished in squalor, their pure blood meaningless without wisdom or humanity. Voldemort was reduced to a wraith, his power hollow, destroyed by the very thing he scorned, the love of a mother for her son, a love that flowed not from blood, but from choice, my own life. A testament to the peril of chasing the wrong kind of power, the cost of mistaking dominance for strength, the devastating price of letting fear dictate your choices. I achieved power of a sort. I became headmaster, albeit briefly, under occupation. I mastered the dark arts. I commanded fear. But I lost Lily. I lost my own soul for many years. I died alone, my redemption witnessed only by a boy I had spent years tormenting, a boy who carried the eyes of the woman I loved. Was it worth it? The ambition, the rise I sought within the corrupted house? No, 1,000 times, no. True power lies in choices made in the quiet moments, in the choice to protect a child, even if it means sacrificing your own reputation, in the choice to defy a tyrant from the shadows, in the choice to love, even when it offers no advantage, even when it demands everything. Salazar Slytherin sought to protect wizardkind. He failed because he sought to protect only a part, and in doing so, he weakened the whole. He feared the Muggles would destroy magic. Instead, the rot within, the fear, the pride, the obsession with blood, nearly destroyed it from within. Voldemort accelerated that rot to its logical, horrific conclusion. The fall of Slytherin House is not a tragedy because it lost power. It is a tragedy because it forgot why it sought power in the first place. It forgot the original impulse was preservation, not of bloodlines, but of magic itself, of the wonder, the beauty, the fragile light that exists in every witch and wizard, regardless of where their parents were born. When that light is extinguished in one, it dims for all. When one house is consumed by darkness, the entire castle grows colder. The lake above the Slytherin common room is deep and still. Its waters hold secrets older than Hogwarts. If you sit quietly in that green-lit chamber, if you listen past the chatter of students, past the echoes of Quidditch victories and defeats, you can almost hear it. The whisper of Salazar's disappointment, the sigh of the stones as they remembered the weight of the serpent banner before it was stained. The faint, lingering echo of ambition that once sought only to build, not to break. It is a place of power, yes, but it is also a place of profound sorrow, a monument to what was lost. The rise was steep, built on the shoulders of a brilliant, fearful man. The fall was a long, slow crumbling, accelerated by generations who mistook poison for purity, dominance for dignity, blood for worth. It is a cautionary tale written not in ink, but in blood, in tears, in the shattered lives of those who followed the wrong star. Do not mistake my words for condemnation of the house itself. I am Slytherin. That mark is on my soul, deeper than the dark mark ever was. I speak from within the ruin. I speak as one who helped build the pyre, and then tried, desperately, to save a single flower from the flames. The traits are not the flaw. Ambition, cunning, resourcefulness. These are tools. Like a knife, it can prepare a life-saving potion, or it can take a life. The flaw was in the hand that wielded the tool, in the heart that guided it. The flaw was forgetting that true preservation requires inclusion, not exclusion. That true strength lies in unity, not division. That the deepest magic, the magic that truly endures, is not found in blood, but in choice, in love, in sacrifice, in the quiet, unheralded acts of protection that cost everything and ask for nothing in return. The Chamber of Secrets remains sealed, its monster gone, its purpose perverted beyond recognition. Perhaps that is fitting. Some doors, once opened to darkness, should remain closed. But the true Chamber Salazar sought to build a sanctuary for magic, a place where its deepest wells could be safely drawn. That chamber must be rebuilt, not beneath the lake, hidden in shadow, but in the light, in the hearts of every witch and wizard who chooses to wield their ambition for good, their cunning for protection, their power for the preservation of all magic, not just their own. It will not bear the name Slytherin. That name is too heavy with blood. But the spirit, the true spirit of Salazar's flawed but essential dream, that spirit can live again, not in one house, but in all of them. In the courage of Gryffindor, tempered by wisdom, in the loyalty of Hufflepuff, strengthened by resolve, in the intellect of Ravenclaw, guided by compassion, and yes, in the ambition of Slytherin, finally, tempered by a moral core, directed towards the preservation of the light, not the hoarding of power in the dark. That is the only rise worth having. That is the only legacy worth salvaging from the ashes. That is the lesson etched in the fall. Without love, without empathy, without the understanding that we are all threads in the same tapestry, The brightest ambition is merely the prelude to the deepest darkness. Sleep now. Let the weight of this history settle. Let the green light fade. The castle stands. The lake is deep. The stones remember. And in the quiet, perhaps, a new foundation can be laid. Not on blood, not on fear, but on the choice to protect the light. Always, always, let the silence take you. Let the deep waters of sleep rise and carry you away from the shadows. The story is told. The lesson is learned. Rest, rest now.